And she got on her knees and she started crying. And she said, you have to do something. You cannot allow this to go on. You've lost your fire. I don't know why. I don't know what's happened. I don't know where it went, but you've lost it. And to hear her say the words, you've lost your fire. I don't know if it was an ego thing. I don't know if it was like the equivalent of someone putting those things on you to like bring you back to life. Something inside of me was not okay hearing that.
I want to be so rigid from the intro in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to be me, you know?
I want to be me.
I want to be me. And I want to, like, be comfortable with you.
Hey.
My hands are getting sweaty.
Mine too.
They don't get to be, right?
No.
It's so weird. It's so weird.
We actually haven't done this in a long time.
We haven't. It's been a while.
And a lot of people always ask us to do something together.
Yeah.
So they're encouraged me.
Why did we wait so long to do it?
I don't know. I think the circumstances ended up playing out how they did. And we're just like, okay, cool. I guess it's time.
You know, also too, I kind of had like this vision of it being like this big thing. Like I needed to have this set up and this set up for it to look professional.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think part of it has to do because I do want to carry myself that way, and I do want to present our conversations that way, or just in general, like conversations,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then there's also the other part of like it needing to look a certain way for it to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like waiting has had this buildup where we're two entirely different people compared to who we were a couple of years ago.
I would say even 6 months ago.
Yeah, well, 6 months ago for sure. But since our last podcast that we did,
Mm-hmm.
entirely different people, and we have a plethora of knowledge and experiences and stories, and it's you know it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's cool. And then now there is this badass setup. Shout out to Antoine Mendez for having this here. So, anyways, our intro. That's the intro. So I just want to say thank you, Angie, for being here. I really appreciate you being here. For those of you who don't know who Angie Sanchez is, she is my girlfriend for 6+ years now? Almost 6.5. We're getting close to that.
I think we're there.
6.5 years. I spit some game in the DMs a long time ago. Shot my shot. I saw your legs and I was like, yo, what's up? But no, really what drew me into you was your writing style. And I saw that I knew that you were a coach because you kept popping up on my feed when I used to do Periscope. When I was doing Periscope, I think you would pop up. Was it Periscope? It was some sort of live.
Well, it was around Periscope
where you
Periscope. Had your that large Facebook group of like 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And you used to promote my thing.
And I always used to see your face, your little like face pop up. And I was like, oh, Angie's here. And my perception of you, it still was like, she's so professional. Really. And I still see you that way too, of course. You're very professional. But every time I saw you come on, I remember like I would sit up a little bit more. Angie Sanchez is here. And but I didn't really know much about you except that you were a coach. And I think you had a workshop that you were promoting. Because we obviously were friends on Facebook at that time. And I saw that you were promoting a workshop. Mm-hmm. And I remember I shared your workshop to the Facebook group. And you liked it. And I think I expected a thank you or even like, oh my God, that's awesome. Thank you. Or something like that. And I think I even asked you how did it go and you never responded to me.
Oh my God. Yeah. I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. But
my MO is, of course, be appreciative and grateful. And it still baffles me that that's what you're saying happened because I don't recall that happening at all. And I also I remember that it was shared, but I don't remember what happened after that. And I remember seeing it and feeling extremely grateful for it. So, because I was like, I didn't ask you to do that.
No, yeah. And I didn't and I had this expectation that was unrealistic and totally, it was just my ego, right? At the time. Like that was me.
Yeah, but it was weird that I don't know. I guess you remember more than I do in that department. But thank you.
Oh, yes, I got it. I finally got the thank you.
He got the thank you 6.5 years later.
Yeah. So I just want to share, like, with you my appreciation of you. And I think you're an amazing human being, and you're a lovely human being. And the world is very fortunate to have you here. And I feel fortunate to have you, and your clients are fortunate to have you. And I would love to ask you some questions about who you are and what you represent, what you stand for, what you're moving towards. So,
Put me in, coach.
put you in. Here we go. Pop, pop. So, just a brief history from your point of view, your perspective. How did we meet? How did we get here? What happened?
How did we meet? Is I think the best way to simplify that when people ask us is it went down in the DM.
Mm-hmm.
And that is exactly what happened. Although we were in each other's radar for a couple years, we were always in relationships. So, I was in a relationship, you were in a relationship, and then when I wasn't, you were still in one, or when you weren't, I was still in one. It was like the timing was never there. And also, it wasn't, at least in my mind, a thought. Like, I never looked at you that way. I always thought there was this cool human being on the literal opposite side of the country doing his thing, similar to mine in some ways. And I think the way you spoke, the way you wrote, all of that always kept me very intrigued to where I'd see you do a live and I'd want to pop in. And yeah, it was just, you were there. I was there. And in 2017, it just so happened that I had exited that last relationship I was in. And I was very much in a space where even my mentor at the time, we had a conversation about my intention moving forward was I'm good. Like, I'm not really looking for anything. And I don't think I that's even part of the plan anymore. I'm okay with building my empire and my life on my own. And that's what I was committed to. And I didn't really care. And I also knew that that was coming from a place of just reaching like my threshold with relationships and men and love and all of that. And then the other part of me was because I also understood that it was okay, like it's fine. And so sure enough, when I put my sword down with that a couple of months later, this little cookie pops up. and we laugh about this all the time. You got on my page. And I guess it had been a long time since you had been on my page, because here I was on my phone and I had like 19 Instagram notifications, like back to back to back. And I'm just like, what is this? And there was this person that was not just liking all my content, but deep liking it, like going way back into the feed, down into the feed. And you also commented on a lot of things, and you were very specific with what you were saying, which meant that you read my captions.
Yeah.
Hence why you said you were attracted to my writing and my self-expression in that way. And after you did that, you sent me a message. And I remember scheduling something with you. You asked me that you wanted to know more about my business and what it is that I did and how that worked, to see if we can become, I guess, like referral systems for each other, blah, blah, blah.
I was winging it.
And so I said, sure. And I remember that because also of the time difference, East Coast, West Coast, it was very challenging to like make something work. And I think that we didn't get anything on the books. We weren't able to get anything on the books for like 2 weeks out. And I don't remember what happened that the next day. It was like I posted something, a burrito, that I was eating while I was out. And what did you say?
Work that shit.
And I was like, already there. And we just started chatting back and forth. And like the little weirdo that you are, you started sending responses, video responses that always cut off at 15 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And you kept doing that until eventually we just got on a FaceTime.
Mm-hmm.
And we spoke for hours. And I guess the rest is history, because I can keep going with this, but
Yeah,
just,
I'll chime in.
yeah, go for it.
Put me in.
You asked me from my vantage point and my perspective. And
I love the story so far.
yeah,
It's good.
Yeah.
So I remember. So first of all, it took so long to schedule something because I was pretending to be busy, and I didn't really have a busy schedule because I had a 9 to 5. I was so I was like kind of playing the card.
Oh,
So you didn't know that?
no.
Oh yeah, no. The truth came out. It took us 6.5 years to get the thank you and to know the truth. Yeah.
I was genuinely busy.
I was pretending I was busy. I mean, I was busy, but not like that. I could have squeezed you in anywhere. And just for reference, murk it. Murk that shit means to kill it. Like, gotta kill it. So kill that burrito. But yeah, so when I had seen your writing, I was like, yo, this person is really like effective and great with her words, and her writing is phenomenal. And you kind of reminded me of me. And hence, whatever we're attracted to, it's usually a reflection of us to some degree. And I remember thinking like, damn, she's a really good writer. And I remember reading one piece thinking that I had written it. I was like, this, not to say that you had copied it. It was so parallel to like the way I was thinking and what I had thought. You know how when people say like, oh my God, you're speaking right to me when you create content, right? Which is the whole point, pretty much. I felt like you were speaking to me, but you were like speaking from me. And then I remember just being taken back by that. And I'm like, who is this chick? And then I remember scrolling down and I saw you in some rollerblades and I saw your legs. I love legs. And I saw your legs and I was like, yo, what's up? And in my mind, you know what I mean? And then I remember saying to my coworker, this guy Chase, at the time, I'm like, you know what? I showed him a picture of her. I'm gonna try to spit game at her, see what's up. And then plant the seeds. Now we're here. But yeah, there was a whole lot of stuff that happened in between then and now. But yeah, so the video chat. I remember sending you those video chats back to back to back, and then we ended up getting on FaceTime or whatever it was, and then I remember I showed you my book collection or my little shelf, and conversations with God was there. Or no, I sent you a video. It was still a video chat, and I showed you my book collection, and then you said Conversations with God. You've read that? And I said, yeah, I've read that. And then you're like, hey, let's FaceTime or something like that. And then we hopped on a FaceTime, and then we spoke till like 2, 3 in the morning. Something, my time, 2, 3 in the morning. I forget what time it was, but it was early in the morning. And it was a great oh my God. And then when I showed you, at that same time when I was showing you the books, there was, I was showing you.
That's my favorite book.
Right, that is your favorite book. I had, at the time, I was building pyramids out of steel. I don't even want to get into that story right now, but I was building pyramids out of steel. I used to weld and all that stuff. And so I had this huge pyramid that was inside of my closet. It was like maybe 3 feet, 4 feet high. And when I was scrolling down to show you the pyramid, you're like, oh, what is that, a heart? And I remember thinking like, does this pyramid really look like a heart? In my mind, I'm like, what? And then I took a step back, and because of the way the light was hitting my clothes, there was a perfectly shaped heart against the wall.
In a shadow.
And I think both of us at the same time were thinking,
freaked out.
Well, I remember thinking like, fuck. Like when there's signs, there's signs.
Yeah.
Like there already was a connection with a very short period of time. And then with that happening, I'm like, don't make it mean anything. Let's just, whatever, we'll talk. And that was on a Friday, I believe, or Thursday. It was a Thursday going into a Friday. So Friday morning, we get off the phone. This is what stood out to me big time. I think I was on my way to work. You were on your way to go see
Body Talk.
Body Talk. And I was at Starbucks grabbing a coffee, and you texted me and asked me, how are you doing? Did you get up? Were you able to get up? Or something like that. And I'm like, what? Like she actually cares? Because the whole thing, like prior to you, I had spoken this into existence. I wanted someone to show interest. and not hold back. Right. So, because, a lot of people hold back, like, I don't want to show interest because then what if, whatever. And so I remember thinking, like, damn, this is dope. Like, she's a cool person. She's actually interested. Like, this is obvious. Like, it's not about, is she interested or not? Like, it was very clear at that point. And it wasn't after that. So, yeah, so all of that happened, all of that unfolded. And then that was on a Friday. And on Monday, I had booked my flight. I had bought my ticket for a couple weeks after that to come meet you. And because I had to know, I was like, well, I'm not going to waste my time. I try to throw everything at you. I have a daughter. I was previously married. I'm not looking for a long-term relationship. You're in Miami. I'm in LA. This is a long-term thing. This is distance or long distance. I'm sorry, long distance relationship. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. You're like, I know. I'm not trying to do this either. Like, then what are we doing? And then I was like,
I threw everything at you too.
You threw everything at me too. And I was like, well, then I'm going to hop on a plane and go see what's up.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right. And then, yeah, all of that went down. And that was, when you know something is right, like when you feel aligned to it, logically, it doesn't make sense, but with your heart, it does. That was one of the first, I want to say top 3 times in my life where I was like, this doesn't make fucking sense, but it makes sense. You know what I mean?
Which is also very indicative, if you think about it, of how much you did allow your heart to be open during that initial process.
Absolutely.
Because of that is why you were able to make the decision, even though it did not make sense. And same here, because I threw everything at you too. I was like, I don't do long distance. That doesn't work. I don't want to date a man with a child. And because back then, I didn't want kids. And I was like, this is crazy. And I'm also not looking for anything because I just got out of something a few months ago. It was just like, and
same here. Yeah.
Walls. But I was like, but here are my walls. Just gonna let you know what they are, and you let me know what yours were. So I guess because from that perspective, we were both on the same page. It allowed us to feel comfortable continuing to communicate and allowing things to unfold. And then it just became very undeniable.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I met Mom the second trip, your mom.
It was the second?
It was the second trip,
Okay.
I believe. Yeah. And everything moved forward just like that. And then I ended up leaving my job like 6 months after that.
Yeah.
Like things move fast. And what's crazy is that everything that I was asking for, because I was aligned with a lot of stuff and I had been letting go of a lot of things too, it happened really quick. Like I had told you, I think maybe just a year ago, how someone gave me a reading, someone who was clairvoyant gave me a reading and said that a woman who is fire, like she's literally fire, is going to come into your life and help you restructure a bunch of things. And you're going to help her with a bunch of stuff and it's going to be a great match. I'm like, yeah, okay, like whatever. Remember I told you that recently? And yeah, and then you're a Sag. You're straight fire. Like
my dosha, for all of you out there who are familiar with Ayurveda, my dosha is Pitta, which is fire.
Which is fire. Straight fire and from all angles.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was that's our love story. That's our love story and how we got here to this point. That's part 1 of our love story.
And that's still on the surface.
Yeah, very much on the surface.
But that is how it happened. So if you notice, there was a lot of themes there. Keeping your heart open, being okay with it not being figured out, which means being okay with figuring it out as you go, and seeing a filtering process.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
Yes, where I think that's where, at least with my clients, and I think you experience it with yours too, when we have conversations with them where they're being challenged with being themselves, being authentic, being who it is they are so afraid to do that at times. And they say things like, oh, but what if they think I'm too much? Or what if they think this, or what if I'm too sensitive, or what if I'm too like, what if I come off as too needy, too desperate, things like that. And my response is always like, look, if you don't show them exactly who you are, it doesn't mean that you need to throw everything out there as far as baggage and, things you're working on, or just, but as far as like your personality, like this is who I am, this is what I do well with and what I don't, and what I'm looking for and what I'm not trying to do again, they are going to end up falling for a version of you that is not real. Essentially, they're gonna fall for someone who doesn't exist. And then later on, they're gonna find out truly who that person is, and they're gonna be like, what? So I always say, don't you want to know? So being exactly who you are is the ultimate filter.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there's gonna be things that are like, they're going to be learned along the way. They're going to be revealed along the way. But what I'm saying is initially starting that way, instead of starting in a way or being a person who you think that person needs to see and experience, because you're afraid of what they're going to think if you really show them this. And so that's why with us, we did that, because then it was very quick. It was like, okay, no, this is where I'm at. This is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is what I don't want. This is what I want. And then it's kind of like, cool, now you get to decide what you want to do with that information, and vice versa. And then we decided what we wanted to do with that information. We knew what the cards were that were being dealt on the table. And we were okay with that. And even though, like you said, logically it didn't make sense, a lot of it still felt right. And maybe sometimes you don't have words for that. So there's a saying that says, which I love, and it'll sum up essentially what I'm trying to say here, is you need to be exactly who you are so that the people looking for you can find you. How else would you have found me, or me find you, if we weren't being exactly who we were? And so it always pays off at the end. And it's almost like I don't know how to be any other way.
Yeah, and I feel like, when we met, both of us were super committed. We still are, but both of us at the time were super committed to our own purpose, like what we were doing for ourselves to make an impact.
Sure.
Like I was trying to build a business, but I was super committed to expressing like what I stand for.
Mm-hmm.
And I had built communities around me. I had built a brand. I had been making all these connections. You were on your path too. And because I think we were so devoted to what we were creating, we saw each other, like literally cross each other's paths. Which leads me to this question here is, especially when it ties in with authenticity, right? Where people struggle with being authentic. And I believe when a person taps into their authenticity, they're self-aware, they know who they are, they know what they want, they know what they stand for, and they have a vessel, a way to get that message out, right? Whether it be through attire, through speaking, through actions, actions meaning, some sort of charity or whatever their work is or whatever they do. It could be being a parent, right? My question is what is it that has you tap into your authenticity? Like there are things that you stand for. Let's start with that. What is it that you stand for? Let me say this too, or ask this too. There's stuff that's going on in the world, or there's stuff that's happened in the past that you experienced where you're like, you know what? Like, I'm done with this. Or you know what? I want more of this, and this is what I'm committed to. Was there any of that in your past? And does that have anything to do with what you stand for now and your purpose?
Yes. Emotional freedom starts with that. I can sit here and list one by one what have been the events and the circumstances up to recently that have owned me, so to speak, that have really impacted me for the good and the bad, better for worse. I can sit here and tell you the things, right? And I'm not going to do that because in a way it almost feels like I would be like using those things as excuses or blaming those things for why certain things have been the case. So I rather talk about my responses or reactions to those things, dating back to even when I was a little girl and a teenager and then a young adult and now as an adult, where seeing how the mismanagement of my emotions, and in particular certain emotions over others, because of that, that's been what's consumed me and held me prisoner and really take a hold on me and paralyze me and kept me stuck, and also recycling a lot of the same experiences. And so it's like a form of emotional slavery. So I realized very early on that I did not have the tools and the education and the awareness, so to speak, of certain things, which is why I also saw it a lot in my environment with my peers and my family members and my friends, and even a lot of men that I dated and was in relationships with, where it was like a pattern where I'm like a lot of people go through a lot of these things, some worse than others, and experience a lot of these things, and it almost feels like something is missing here. Like, why weren't we taught certain things? Like, why weren't we told about certain things? Why didn't my parents, my teachers, my elders? And so I started seeing that, and I saw specifically how it impacted me. And there were many moments where I'm like, man, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel things so strongly? Why is it that it has so much power over me? And it just became a very intriguing, curious thing for me that had me begin to explore how to know more, how to overcome it. Did I have options? Is there someone out there who can help me learn a lot of these things? And I think that introspection spearheaded that shift in my life and thus my evolution. So, in a nutshell, freedom, but specifically emotional freedom, is something that I stand for. And I know you know a lot about that because that's where you and I overlap in our own personal values. It's freedom. And I'll keep it there.
Yeah, no, I definitely can relate to that too. I see you, definitely see you, and I see the work that you're doing, and it's profound. And I can relate to being an emotional slave. And it's interesting what emotion is, right? And how it does play a role in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it right now in the world where it's being used almost as a weapon
Sure.
to control people.
Yep.
They get you emotionally reactive, you get angry,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have control of yourself, and then you operate from that stance, and you unconsciously create your reality from that emotion.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be extremely angry when I was younger, and I remember my mom telling me, she was like, "Yeah, you used to. Your grandma used to always ask about you, like, why is he so angry? Why is he so angry all the time?" And I didn't think I was angry because I thought it was normal. I thought having that strong emotion was normal,
Same.
right? And it wasn't until much later in my life, actually around my spiritual awakening, 2011, but between 11 and 14, the year 2011, 14 was when I started to really understand what that was and where it was coming from. I still don't fully understand where some of these things come from as far as emotions go, because I don't think that road ever ends as far as clearing that, like healing yourself completely. It's an onward journey, right? Layer after layer, because there's still stuff that comes up.
Yeah.
There's still things that trigger me, right? But I remember being really angry and argumentative and being defensive and always thinking people were out to get me. Like anytime someone was showing me love, I'm like, who sent you?
Like you would doubt it.
Yeah, I'm like, who sent you? Was it an ex? Is someone pissed off at me? like this doesn't make any sense. So then it had me rejecting love, right? Or any sort of intimacy.
Sure.
I was, the surface level intimacy, right? The physical intimacy, but anything deeper than that, Nah, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm cool on that. But yeah, there was some stuff that switched for me that had me realize certain things. I want to ask you because I want to ask you this question because this is something that I'm seeing, something that's beneficial for people to understand when it comes to switches. Like there's something that switched, a specific experience that switched in your life. If you're open to sharing that, something that switched, something that happened that had you completely do an about face, meaning you turned your back on this and you're like, I see you, I'm with you, and I wanna be different.
I have several. I actually call them, I have a name for them. They're called
Oh,
Red Sea parting moments. And there are two that I'll mention. Probably have like a good handful or two, but these two in particular changed the trajectory of my life. So I'll mention them quickly. The first one happened in my early 20s. So I talked about this at length. So a lot of you know this about me, a lot of you may not. Plays a role in why I do what I do today. From the ages of 21 through 24, I suffered from clinical depression. Yes, like I was diagnosed, it consumed me. If I tell you how my life looked like during that time, a lot of you would be very shocked to hear that I went through that. And yeah, it was very real. And then as a way to cope from the depression, I developed BED, which is binge eating disorder. Okay. So during that period, the only people who I allowed to have access to me were my mother, my stepfather, my therapist, and occasionally my grandparents, my uncle, and like a friend or two. But I hibernated in my home for 6 months, which means I didn't leave. And when things got pretty bad, I think my mother was the one that, I would speak to the most or be in communication with the most. And even then, she would kind of like tread around what was happening because she wanted to support me and love me and help me and not make things worse. And I think she also didn't want to admit that this was really becoming a problem. Like this was a thing. And eventually she herself hit a breaking point with that. And I remember being on the couch, just laid out like a vegetable. And she was talking to me from the kitchen and, just kind of telling me, like, oh, you should do this. And why don't you try doing that? And, whatever. And I wasn't working at the time. I had already graduated And why don't you do this to at least get your feet wet? Or why don't we go to a movie? And she was just making all these just very gentle suggestions. And I just remember being numb and so dissociated and so apathetic. So it's not that I was like denying her, but I was just like not there. And I think that freaked her out. And she came to me and just kind of put her hand on me and was like, you have to do something. And she got on her knees and she started crying. And she said, you have to do something. You cannot allow this to go on. You've lost your fire. I don't know why. I don't know what's happened. I don't know where it went, but you've lost it. And to hear her say the words, you've lost your fire. I don't know if it was an ego thing. I don't know if it was like the equivalent of someone putting those things on you to like bring you back to life. Something inside of me was not okay hearing that. And it's kind of like when someone too like slaps you around a little bit, like, yo, wake up. And you're just like, whoa, okay, yeah, I'm here. So that happened internally. I didn't tell her at the moment. And I also think I needed to process that, but something shifted in that moment where from that point on, in very small incremental steps, I started to create a little bit more motion in my everyday, whether it was going for a walk, accessing the little gym that we had there in our complex, um, going to the movies with them, like just things like that. And so that was, I can go on with that, but that was one of them for me where I was like going down this path, and then all of a sudden I'm like, whoop, because something inside of me just kind of woke up. And it's that part of me that I think will always be there, that I love her so much because she has really made shit happen. And that's how I lived my life for those first 21 years. And then she just kind of got lost for a little bit. And also those first 21 years, a lot of it was extreme. A lot of it was overachiever. A lot of it was always like, go, 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 where I was like, I needed to be the best at everything. And I was. And I took a lot of pride in that, and my family did too. And that was just, and I also acknowledged that that was not sustainable. I could operate that way if I wanted to, but it wasn't sustainable from a quality of life and peace and, burnout type of perspective. It's just, and so that's why I'm able to sit back now and reflect on that time in my life and be so grateful for it. Because it was like I needed to bring forward into my life now and this new version of Angie, aspects of her, which are at my foundation, at my core, and who I love. And also the new pieces, the feedback, the parts of that evolution that were born throughout that process. So that was the first and the major Red Sea party moment that shifted things for me. And the second one is more simple than that, was just when I left corporate. I eventually got a job in the corporate world, doing the 9 to 5, making good money, doing the things I was good at. And after 4.5 years of repeating certain experiences, I made the decision to pay attention to that which I kept recreating for myself. Was like, dude, like, when is enough enough? You keep going from one bad situation to the next, thinking that it's going to be different. You don't want to do this. You absolutely hate it. Look at what happens every time that you go from it takes a person telling you that you're good at something, or you getting certain results to prove to yourself that you are good at something, and having your ego stroked a little bit in this corporate world, and like, you're miserable. You don't have time to do the things that you love. You wake up in the morning hating life and sitting in traffic for an hour one way and almost 2 hours on the way back. Like, do you really want? No. And you hate working for someone else. And look, I don't knock that, but I was like, I knew that I needed to be my own boss, which meant that entrepreneurship and having a business needed to be an option for me. I just didn't see it at the time because I was like, how am I going to do that? I don't know anything about starting a business or running a business. And eventually, when I made that decision to leave and do the damn thing, it created a massive shift in my life. So those are two that stand out that really, really, really changed my entire life. And I've reaped the benefits of both.
Thank you for sharing that. I had something pop up, and I can bring this up because I know you. You had broke your spine, broke your back,
Sure.
essentially in a car accident,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that was.
How long before the depression did that happen?
That happened when I was 19, so 2 years before.
2 years before.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened when you were at UM.
Yep.
Right?
I was a sophomore, in college.
A sophomore in college. And then, so depression 2 years after that, and then you were at the end, pretty much, of college.
Yep, that was my last year, my senior year.
It's often said that when people experience, and I don't know if this is what was going through your head at the time of that accident, and this is just popping up in my head right now, which is why I'm bringing it up.
Let's do it.
It's often said that when people have what they perceive as a near-death experience or something that is altering, like where it's going to cause someone to be immobilized. And I'm sure that was a fear running through your head.
Oh, yeah.
Where it can completely have you shift everything about yourself and your reality. I know just personally with me, having a few different experiences at my old job that you know about, we won't get into it, but that changed everything for me. Do you think, have you ever considered that being that is a possibility where, first of all, let me ask you this question. Did it ever go through your head that maybe perhaps you wouldn't make it or that you wouldn't walk again?
The second one.
That you wouldn't walk again?
Yeah, for sure.
Got it. I'm sure that shifted a lot.
Do you want me to talk about it? Yeah.
I want to
respect, where we're, because I can be long-winded with things.
Yeah, and I want to know your perspective of that. If you've ever considered that, maybe that has something to do.
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember exactly how I felt, how I processed all of that, and I'll tell you why. Also, it didn't come up as like my go-to example. It was something on paper that sounded a lot worse than what it really was. I mean, it was bad. But I was so like, I'm not going to allow this to break me. This is not a big deal. Like, I have to be in the hospital for 4 or 5 days. Cool, I have to miss class. I like pretended like nothing. Because I didn't want, first of all, I didn't want people around me to worry. And I also didn't want to make it this thing that like knocked me off my game. And it didn't. That's the thing. I think I was also I surprised the doctors too. I'll tell you exactly what the spinal specialist told me in a second. Where I was like, all right, cool. Like it was bad when it happened and I healed and recovered so well that it's like not a thing. It wasn't a thing. So then because it wasn't a thing that didn't change anything because I didn't want it to. Nothing really changed except the fact that I had gone through that experience. Like nothing came out of that. And in reality, I'm sure there's aspects of that, from a trauma vantage point, were stored in my body that maybe haven't been fully processed for sure. I think the fact that it happened in broad daylight on a weekend.
Share briefly for people who don't know.
Sure. I was 19 going to a breast cancer walk in support of a former best friend of mine. Her mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer, I think maybe like a year before. And so we had agreed that we would go to this big walkathon for her. And it was 5 of us, 5 girls that went in one car. And we did the walk and it was great on like a Saturday morning really early. And when we left, probably like at 11, headed back home, I was in the car. Like I said, 5 of us. I was in the back seat. So I was not driving. I was not in the passenger. And I was in the back, not in the middle, but on the right-hand side. And the car was, you remember Saturn Ions? They have those little suicide doors, and then they have like the regular doors. So we were going through an intersection, normal intersection. We had the right of way, and all of a sudden a working van at like 40-something miles an hour T-bones us on my side. And I think the worst part of that was we saw it coming. That was the worst part. And I think that's what contributed to actually why I got hurt, because you tense up. So we were driving, and as we were driving, it was like this all happened in a split second. All of us were like, yo, that van isn't stopping. So as we were going to keep going through the intersection, and the van was just, we noticed that very quickly. And so the driver of the car I was in tried to swerve like out of the way. And what do you think that did? It would have been T-bone into passenger, but because she tried to swerve, it T-boned into me. And it was like bracing for impact. As soon as it was like the hardest hit I've ever experienced. And glass everywhere. My ears were ringing because it was so loud, smoke everywhere, and the car spun and spun and spun and spun and spun. I remember being like, when is it going to stop spinning? And it spun so hard that it even tilted to one side where I thought we were going to flip over, and then eventually we equilibrium balanced right back. And I remember that when it happened, my initial reaction was to jump out of the car and get out of this mess because we saw smoke everywhere. And that's what everyone's initial reaction was. And I saw everyone do that. And I realized that when I went to go do that, I could not move. And I was like, it was just like this intense pain that did not allow me to do the thing that I needed to do to survive. And I was also kind of trapped on my side because that suicide door caved in completely onto me. So that means I would have had to try to get out through the other side, and it was too much exertion that would have been required for that, and I couldn't do it. So when everyone got out, I remember kind of like looking to my side, and I was alive, I was okay, but the first thoughts were, what if I can't walk? Because this pain that I had was a pain I've never experienced, just up and down my spine. And I saw the guy who hit us jump out of his car and run to the corner to start making calls on his phone. He didn't even check to see if we were okay, to see if we needed help. He was immediately just thinking about himself. And I remember being like, wow, this is really happening right now. And the girl who was sitting in front of me in the passenger seat, it was her mom that had been diagnosed with the breast cancer, and we had gone to support her. I'll never forget this, and I'll thank her till this day. She did everything she could to pull that door open and try to get me out. And eventually she kind of maneuvered it where it moved. And she had a hold of my arms, but she tried to pull me. I'm like, I can't. She's like, you have to try to get out. You have to. And I just remember not being able to. And I was like, I really hope this car doesn't blow up. And before I knew it, the ambulances were there. And everyone kind of backed off except the two paramedics, and they had to basically break the passenger seat in front of me. Not tear it out completely, but break it and put it out of the way so they can stick a stretcher into the back seat and maneuver like my waist so that I can just, like, that's a stretcher, I can just slip onto it. And then they put this like board or something behind me to keep my back erect, because they're like, you might have broken something, we need to keep everything, and just kind of like lay me down like that. And that was so painful. And in that process, right before they were going to put me on the board, they had put like a neck brace on me to like start helping support that. And it was so much for me. And they were asking me all these questions where I'm like, dude, why are you asking me all these questions right now? I can't do this. And I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out, because every time I was trying to speak, I would get nauseous. And eventually it was so much exertion for my body that I passed out. I lost consciousness for what they said was 2.5 minutes. And I woke up to an ammonia wipe right by my nose that eventually, kind of woke me up again. And I do remember when that happened that I felt like I was dreaming, like I was floating, like I was in some sort of, it just felt nice. It felt good. It was very like dreamlike, where I'm like, oh. And then when I came to be, I was still like, oh, and I completely forgot that I was in a car accident. I was like, oh, oh shit. Oh my God, this happened. Oh my God, this is, oh man, oh. And it just like hit me like a ton of bricks. I was so out of it. And they're like, okay, it's okay. It's okay. Like, you're back. Don't worry about answering any other questions. Just if we need something from you, we'll ask you yes or no, and you just nod your head. Like, look, we found your phone. Um, you need to call someone. Who do you want to call? We can call them for you. And I just remember being like, I cannot call my mother as the first person because she will lose her mind. And even though I'm okay, let me call my uncle first because my uncle is a doctor and like my big brother, and he can handle this. And I knew that because he actually worked at the hospital they were going to take me at, he would be there in a nutshell. So I called him, and it was very like, hey, they put the phone to my ear. Hey, this is what happened. I'm okay. This is where I'm going. And he's like, all right, I'm on my way. Boom. So then they finally put me on the stretcher, and it was like your scene from watching the news when you see people being like loaded onto an ambulance type of thing with the neck thing and all that. I'm like, man, this is really happening right now. It was just like, obviously something's wrong because this pain is like. And then they put the phone to my ear again, and I called my mom. And I remember being like, hey, listen, I'm okay. That's the first thing I said. Okay. But this happened. So I was in an accident, and they're taking me right now to Jackson Memorial to Ryder Trauma. And my mom flipped out so bad. And I remember the first words out of her mouth were, is the car okay? And I'm like, really? That was a whole nother thing later. But I told her, and she's like, all right, we're on our way. And so by the time I got there, her, my stepdad, and my uncle were at the ER, and my uncle had talked to everybody already at the ER to basically make it a very like smooth transactional process. Took me straight to get full body x-rays, CAT scans, because I lost consciousness. They wanted to check my brain out, and they needed to check for internal bleeding. And so when everything came back, the final consensus was that I had broken ribs 1 through 4. And rib number 4 caused what you call a pneumothorax, which is a puncture in my lung. And my thoracic spine, T1 and T2, were fractured because of when it hit me, it was like I had 2 people next to me. So it was like, boom, like an accordion type of thing. And they needed to keep me in the hospital because of the pneumothorax. Until that hole closed, I was not allowed to leave the hospital. So I didn't know how long I was going to stay. That's just what I had to do. And when the spinal specialist came in, he was apparently one of my uncle's friends and said, well, the good news is that your rib breaks and your spinal fractures are in the best place ever. If you can fracture your spine in the best place, it would be there because it's all self-healing. So you're going to be fine. But here's this thing that you need to blow into. It had 2 handles, and it had these little lines that measured how far the contraption would go up to. And they're like, until you pass that line from blowing, you can't go home. So you better believe every day I was in the hospital, like just, and yeah, just that whole process was like unreal where I didn't accept it to an extent. And every day I was like, all right, can I go home? All right, I'm fine. Like, obviously I have this pain, but everything is self-healing. Why do I need to be here? Oh my God, I'm missing class. Oh my God, I can't run. Oh my God, I can't work out. Like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And on the first day, I think after the pain had gone away because I was on morphine, they had told me, nope, if you got to pee, you got to poo, here's your bucket. You can knock it up. I'm like, but I'm fine. Like, I really felt fine. And they're like, no. And I remember my mom was the one that would say there, she's like, No. I'm like, I want to go to the bathroom. I need to pee. Pee in the bucket. And I said, but Mom, I have to know what I'm dealing with. I needed to know the extent of this. I needed to know. Almost like as feedback where I'm like, okay, I'll accept it. I need to know how bad this is.
Did you fuck around and find out?
Yep. And my mom, I persuaded her because I said, you can help me the whole time. It's the bathroom's right here. And so she did and walked me, and then I peed. And when I went to get up from the toilet, I started to get woozy and lightheaded, and I passed out in my mom's arms.
Oh my God.
Completely blacked out, and she was screaming. She had to call the nurse, and they had to help me back in bed, and the nurse was like bitching.
Oh, I bet she was pissed.
She was so pissed. She's like, what are you doing? Like, you know, we told you she can't walk. And then my mom got the brunt of it. She was just like, I don't care what you tell me moving forward. The answer is no. And I fucked around and found out. So I was there 4 days and eventually got my oxygen and my breathing up to where it needed to be, which meant that the hole was closing and healing. And they said, yeah, obviously no physical activity. Had to come out of there, be wheeled out in a wheelchair. And I needed to come out of there. And no running, no exercising. And then I had a follow-up with the spinal specialist 1 month later, which was going to either give me clearance or not. And he was shocked at what I could do as far as movement and what the x-rays and the imagery look like, that he's like, no, you're good. I give you the green light for very light physical activity and definitely like a lot more walking. And I said, but what about running? He's like, try jogging maybe like a minute on, a minute off, just to see what that feels like. You're gonna feel like something, but you know, you have to gauge it. So I give you the green light to start experimenting, and you also have to pay attention to your body. And I remember jogging for 5 minutes was like the most painful thing. And I was like, all right, I can do this. And eventually I worked my way back up. And a couple months after that, I was back, completely back to normal. Like if nothing happened, like 0, 0, 0. The only time I would feel my back in that area was every couple years if I was in a very cold climate or it was really, really cold, like frigid temperatures, like snow or something, where I'd feel just like a little bit of like a pressure and like sensitivity, tenderness, and then the next day it would be gone. And it was like every couple of years. It wasn't anything crazy. So yeah, I treated that event in my life almost like if it never happened because I was fine. No big deal. It didn't cost me anything.
You pointed earlier when you said acceptance, right? Was there something that popped up for you around that, around acceptance or lack of acceptance?
Sure, because in that moment I remember that there were aspects of what happened that I was like, this is not that bad. It's not as bad as everyone's making it out to be. So I can't accept what everyone else is saying. I can only accept what I feel in my body and what I think is possible. And it doesn't have to be this like detrimental end of the world thing. It's what happened. This is just what happened. And I'm going to be fine. And I was fine.
It's interesting how that same mindset can be applied to, I mean, anybody who's listening and watching this, but even to your life now currently, where it's going to be okay. I can accept what's happening. This is what's happening now. What's up?
No, you're right.
And we could use this as a seed to water it, to build upon it, or to have it blossom and grow and to move forward. And there's something else too. I would love to go deeper on that too, but there's something else too that stuck out to me, where the doctor had said to you that it was a perfect break.
Yes, and he used that terminology.
You have, and we don't have to go into the full story about this, but you also
No, yeah.
have a scar on your
Oh,
lip
yeah.
where it was the perfect cut.
Yeah.
It was the perfect break,
Uh-huh.
right? There's a lot of perfect breaks in your life.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that have happened where I would say the dark ages, it looks like if you were to look at your life on a scale or on like some sort of road or row, the dark ages were like 19 to what, 24, 19 to 22 or 3.
You know more about that than I do.
Well,
You're the history buff.
just
Oh,
from
no.
no, for you, for your life, for your
Oh, I
life.
thought you meant like 19.
Oh, 19 something.
I
No,
was
no,
like,
no,
what? No.
no. 19
So,
years of age.
the dark ages, I would say, were 21 through like 24, 25.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
still don't even include your the spinal break in
No,
19.
because that was like a month or two of my life that was like no big deal. Like, oh, you just got
Yeah.
to be out of the game for, and then you're good.
Yeah. It's okay. So like,
Where are you going with this?
because it's the thing that we don't see. We don't. The thing that happens that we don't see tends to be the thing that pulls the strings behind the scenes. And even though it wasn't that impactful, you at one point thought you were never going to walk ever
I
again.
had the thought, yeah.
If the thought comes in and the thought went, you were resisting that whole scenario, which I think is badass, where someone's telling you you're fucked for the rest of your life, and you're like, I'm gonna show you how fucked that is, because I'm not buying into that, right?
Yeah.
So we tend to. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like when people talk about like addiction, right? The relapse isn't when the person actually went back into doing whatever they're doing, right? Whether it be sex, food, substances, whatever. The relapse happened already in the mind, way before the actual physical consumption or whatever it is for that person. And so I see that parallel too in life, where when we see an event happen or we experience an event, that's the effect, right? The cause was something on the mental, vibrational, frequency plane, right? The energetic plane. So it's just like when we manifest things in our life. When we want something to happen, when we want to have an experience, we have to plant those seeds in our minds, right? We hold an image, we get in tune with what it is that it's going to feel like, look like. We align ourselves to it. Then it shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the way to keep recreating something that we don't want is to be reactive to what the effect is. And then we use our emotion, thoughts, and all that to then push it forward, right? To perpetuate it forward where we keep running into it. And that's how we create cycles.
Yeah.
So my point is that it begins where we don't really see it begin. And I think there's something there. This isn't a therapy session. I'm just saying there's just something there that I see where I think it's a beautiful it's a beautiful something there to be explored is profound.
Sure.
And that's all it is. And I'm seeing that pattern with you rising above the shit that has been thrown at you, and that makes you badass.
Sure.
And
Thank
you transition from all of that to leaving the corporate world. First of all, binge eating disorder. Let me just ask you this question: what was your favorite food? Just to bring lightness to that, what was your favorite food to eat when you were?
I will answer that question, and I'm also gonna offer something else because I know that you may have some viewers watching who struggle with it.
Absolutely.
From a disorder standpoint, and also perhaps have tendencies. So I want to make sure I'm kind of speaking about this in the way it deserves to be spoken about.
I appreciate that.
So my favorite food was anything that had to do with chocolate, which still hasn't changed. So chocolate chip cookies or a chocolate cheesecake from Cheesecake Factory, or brownies, or anything just chocolate cereals, chocolate ice, Ben and Jerry's, chocolate fudge brownie, ice cream. I used to eat it in pints at a time. So definitely that. Now, a classic indicator that one does have binge eating disorder, and it's just how powerful BED is when it's true BED, is that it's not about the food at all. So I would binge, and you binge on foods that you don't even care for. So I would find myself eating foods and binging on foods that I didn't care for. It was almost like I'd open the pantry and be like, oh, there's nothing I like. But eventually your mind convinces you that you can have that because it will satisfy something. And then you end up binging on a random food that you typically would never eat, that you probably don't even care for that much because it fills something for you and it soothes you in the way that you want to be soothed. So that's why it's not about keeping certain foods out of the house when you're suffering from this. It's not about restricting, and it's not because it's not about you can keep the trigger foods out of the house. That's fine. My mom attempted that, and that shit didn't work. Because then I'd go eat bread and crackers and other stuff that was there. Because it's not about the foods. That's how you know that this is a thing. This is real. So I want to make sure that that is clear because it's not about certain foods that create these triggers. It's about the addiction to food in general and it filling a void and soothing you and emotionally giving you something that you're lacking and meeting a need that is unmet. That's what it's about. And so that's why there's not really a specific food, but yes, there were patterns in what I would enjoy. And the best part about it was freedom, right? Because my whole life I'd always been like dieting and restricting foods and eating a certain way. And oh, you can't eat this or you can't eat that. There were a lot of food rules. And eventually when I just went to town with food and developed the BED, it was almost like this part of me got to be free. And I could eat whatever I want, do whatever I want, eat as much of it as I want, at whatever time I want. And that's also what fueled it too. It was almost like a rebellion of some sort.
Got it. Got it. That's interesting. That it's not about the food, it's about filling the void.
It is not about the food at all. It is about fulfilling an unmet need.
Right. An emotional.
Correct. And soothing yourself for me, it was from the depression.
Got it. I want to take ownership for something because my intention was to bring, because I'm speaking to you and I know you and your journey and I know where you're at with binge eating disorder and what you've done to overcome that and heal yourself within. So I was speaking to you as your boyfriend and I didn't mean to skip over the significance and impact that has on people. So just in case anybody saw that, they know that that was my intent. Yeah. So just want to take ownership of that. When you overcame that and you broke yourself free, is that what fueled you to want to make an impact, a deeper impact with people? Was that even on your mind, or like what happened next after
that? That wasn't what was it as far as wanting to create the impact. I think it was more about overcoming the dark ages that consisted of that and the depression and the lack of purpose and the lack of identity and also feeling, which is a whole nother rabbit hole that I think is what contributed to the depression, is feeling duped and deceived when I was about to finish college. And I kind of woke up to the reality of the world and I was like, what? This is it? This can't be it. And I felt like I was brainwashed. And I knew that I'm like, there has to be more than this. When I finally was on the verge of making that shift in leaving that life behind of corporate and figuring out what I was going to do, because man, I could not afford to just keep quitting jobs, getting fired from jobs, getting laid off, and like in that cycle of like trying to find what that was and going from one bad situation to another. That was when I hired my first coach and I was 25. So when I started to do that work with him, I started to see what else was out there. It was more like you could live your life this way. These are the options. They're actually endless. And one of the things he first said to me was, have you thought about the fact, Angie, that your dream job, whatever that is, you may have to create it? And I remember that resonating because then it had me consider, stop trying to do something that already exists and fits these molds when you don't like these molds. You don't like it. And it's beyond you don't like it, doesn't feel right. Because it felt like I was always meant for something bigger, something else. So when I overcame the dark ages, especially during my work with him that first year, and I started to see this new version of Angie come out, this new version that was born as a result of overcoming all this, I wanted to do something with her and wanted to do something with all of that and with that evolution. And that's what started to incentivize me to use it as fuel to impact others in a way where they didn't have to go through those things. They didn't have to suffer that much. I wanted to be that which I never had for other people so that they didn't have to kind of go through the same shit that I went through, that I started seeing a lot of people I knew go through. And that's kind of what spearheaded that next part of my life, becoming that for others, which I never had. And that is what began to create that for me, as far as I want to impact people now in this type of way.
Got it.
So it was like the all-encompassing feedback, bits and pieces, and journey, all of that together. It wasn't just one thing. So it was overcoming all of it.
Got it.
Yeah.
This, I'm inclined to ask you this question now too. I wanted to be that for other people, that which I never had, right? You come from a family, well, your grandfather was a political prisoner in Cuba, right, for 17 years?
15 years.
15 years. They escaped, or they left because they needed to come to the country for medical reasons, right?
Right.
And they came to the country, or came to the U.S., so your mom, your uncle, all raised, well, they were born there, but they were raised here.
Correct, yes.
Correct? And then you're born and raised here in Miami, Florida. And your family came from the mindset of, well, I mean, they were living in communism or under communism, right? And so things are different, obviously. There's a lot of scarcity. And that's something that's passed on, scarcity, the mindset of scarcity, right? And you wanted to be something for others, but also be something for yourself that your family didn't have.
And that they couldn't be for me.
That they couldn't be for you, which is what?
Abundance.
Abundance. And when I first met you, in person, it was very obvious that you thought differently, acted differently, lived differently, have a very different relationship around and with money compared to most people. And it's something that I respect, and it's something that I've learned a lot from you. And one of the first things that you had, well, one of the first things I remember you talking about is about money stories, identifying money stories. And I hear you talk about this. I hear you teach your clients about this. You've taught me a lot about that. You've helped me tremendously about that. So I'm going to ask you a little bit about abundance, wealth consciousness. And well, first of all, let's start with the one thing that I remember you bringing up, which is money stories. What is a money story?
A money story, first of all, the first thing that money is before its currency is it's a story. And the story carries a particular frequency and a vibration that is embedded in you, in your tissues, in your bones, in your cells, in your veins, running through your blood. It's very generational as well. So I would like to describe a money story as something that is energy. It's the energy that you carry and that you hold when it comes to money. And then that story colors your perspective and your attitude and your viewpoint on money, transactions, finances, investments, things like that. It infiltrates all of that. So this story about money begins to it starts to be put together by your family, your environment, your culture, your upbringing, and your education, like school and things like that. And then it gets fine-tuned with then experiences. And so over the years, starting when you're little, your story starts to, become very detailed and almost take a life of its own because you're seeing how your parents and your family talk about money. What are the things that they do and don't do? What are the things they say yes to and the things that they say no to? What are the comments that they make out loud when you are out and about and you see other people with the decisions they make when it comes to money, like the cars that they have and the clothes that they wear and the schools that they put their kids in and the trips that they get to go on. Like all of those things, whether you're conscious of it or not, as you know, gets heard by your subconscious mind and it starts to take form. So I saw it very clearly. I became very aware of it in my early 20s, what my money story was. And lo and behold, my reality, my life reflected all of that. And it was very similar to my family and my mom and the things that they would experience with money. So at the end of the day, your money story is the energy, the frequency, and the vibration that you carry with you and within you about money.
Got it. I got it. So, what were some of the things that you had noticed your family saying that you were also saying too to yourself?
A lot of it was mostly the events that happened, not so much like what I would say. I mean, I would say certain things like, I live paycheck to paycheck. This is so annoying. I would see my mom always take out her checkbook and balance it and be like, oh my God, I'm short, or we can't do this, or now we need to save. You can't go there. That's too expensive. We can't afford that, things like that. And then experiences that I would have that she would have often was overdrafting my account. Like, that was like normal in our household. And not being able to do certain things that a lot of my friends and my classmates would do. And I was very confronted by that because even though my family had a scarcity money story, they valued education. So they worked very hard and, blood, sweat, tears to pay for the best education for me and for my uncle. And they were like, nope, like you need to go to private school, you need to go to Catholic school, and we'll figure it out. We'll figure out a way to get financial aid. So it was interesting to see them be resourceful for something that they truly valued. But for everything else, it was scarcity, scarcity, scarcity. So because I was always in that environment of private Catholic school, there was a way of life that I got sucked into in terms of what a lot of my friends had and the trips that they would go on with their families and the way they lived their lives. So I remember being like, oh, I can't do those things. I can't afford those things. I can't even ask if that's an option because it's not. And I remember always feeling less than and inadequate because we would never go on the Christmas, New Year's skiing trips and afford the Louis Vuitton bags and drive the nice car when it was time to get your license and start driving and things like that. So I also realized that I kept reaffirming the scarcity that I was living with by allowing myself to feel less than and being like a victim.
Got it. Got it. I appreciate you sharing that. And you mentioned not going on the skiing trips. You went snowboarding before.
I've gone skiing.
You've gone
Yes,
skiing.
yes.
Did you like it?
I hated it.
You hated it.
Until this day, I have one of my best friends. She knows who she is. I went for her birthday.
Mm-hmm.
This was probably like 2017, January of 2017, the year that we met. And I was so excited to go because I had never seen snow. That was the first time I saw snow.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like late to the party, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was excited about that. Once I got put in that setting, I realized that I don't care for it. I hate being cold, as you know, and that confirmed it. And I don't understand skiing. I don't get why people. I have one of the teenagers I coach. Her parents are obsessed with skiing. Like it's 2024, 2 months in, they've gone 3 times already, and they're from here. And I'm like, power to you. You guys love it. You guys figure it out every time when you want to make it happen, and you do it. And this friend of mine actually moved to Colorado from South Florida because of how much she loves that lifestyle. And I'm just like, I don't get it. I think it's so much work to lug all that equipment and your skis and go up the lift and then to ski down for a minute or two and then have to just like trek on the next slope and I just doesn't make any sense to me. It's exhausting. It's also scary.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing, I'm good at it.
Really?
Yes. So when I did my first lesson, when I got there, I remember the instructor being like, "Are you sure you've never done this before?" And I'm like, "Positive." What? I mean, it looks like it. I'm like, "Well, here's what I could tell you. Doing these moves and, doing everything you're saying and going on the slopes, like, it feels very similar to rollerblading. Kind of like just the motions." And so it was almost like a muscle memory thing. And he's like, "Well, then that makes sense. No wonder it's like almost your body picked it up so easily because it recognized it." And I go, "Yeah, but just because," and I love rollerblading, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I did growing up. It wasn't the bike thing or riding my bike around the neighborhood. It was always rollerblading after school for years. I'm like, but I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't understand the fascination of skiing, and I will never go on vacation to go ski.
So we can pretty much X that out as something that you wish you would have done when you were younger, that you felt kind of that you were not able to do.
I was so underwhelmed.
Right? So because I see you as somebody who, it's difficult for me to find gifts for you for holidays, your birthday, because you can get whatever you want pretty much. Like you do live in abundance. So we know skiing is out of the picture now completely. Are there anything that you want to do? Is there anything you want to do that you haven't done yet that you have access to?
That I haven't done yet? So meaning if I have done it, I can't pick it again?
Yeah, anything new that you would love to do? Something that you wish you would have done as a kid?
I can't access in this moment something. I would have to think about it. And I'm sure there's something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too why it doesn't come to mind is because I've devoted my life to doing all the things I couldn't do and giving all those things to myself. It's true.
Cool. Yeah,
like everything that I was always told no about, or we didn't have the money for, we couldn't afford it, or just I've been able to give that to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Even a few years ago, going to the pumpkin patch for the first time, like my family never took me.
Mm-hmm.
That was not a thing. That was and I just remember doing it in my 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so emotional for me because that was like an experience that I had to give myself. Because along with a lot of things, like it was always like, no, or we don't have time for that. We don't have money for that. Like this doesn't really exist.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know right now, but I'm sure there's an answer and I'll think about it and I'll get back to you.
I want to ask you a few questions. So a few deeper questions. And before I ask those questions, I would love to know from the audience if this is something that you would like to see more of, and if you've actually enjoyed this too as well. You can actually look into that camera. You're speaking right to them.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So if there's anything that has stood out to you about this conversation, please comment below. And if this is something that you would love to see in the future, another conversation between Angelica Sanchez and I, let us know too in the comments below. So I want to ask you this question here. So what do you love most about yourself?
The ability to figure things out as I go.
Okay.
I always figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
It may take time, more effort than not sometimes over others, but I always figure it out.
What do you wish you were better at?
Cooking.
You really do?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. You made rice recently.
Sure.
I was really impressed.
Yeah.
And you've always made good eggs.
Yes, I love my eggs. I'm okay making my own eggs, even though I love your eggs, but I can make you some good eggs. Yes.
What is one quality about you wish you could enhance or improve?
I can always become a better speaker, like public speaker, for sure. I've been out of the game for a little bit, and so I remember public speaking used to be a huge fear, and I overcame that in college because I had to take a public speaking course to graduate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I realized that it was a strength and that I actually did enjoy it and that it wasn't that bad. And so being better at that, perhaps doing it more often, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
What is a fear that you have?
Probably health.
Health?
Health related,
Mm-hmm.
which that's expansive. Yeah.
Okay. And what's your favorite color?
Yellow.
Yellow. That was a quick answer.
Yeah.
What's your favorite type of music?
90s R&B hip hop.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. What do you love most about coaching?
How an individual can come into the session feeling a certain way, operating a certain way, in a certain vibration, and an hour later, they are a totally different version of themselves. They're in a different place, and they leave feeling completely better than how I found them. And then from that version, they create a different outcome, a different reality, and they shift the trajectory of their lives. I've seen that happen so many times, and it's the coolest thing to see. I'm sure you can relate
absolutely.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Any examples that you like to share?
That's a lot. I mean, that's
just an example.
I just think the clarity that I've seen people get in 1 hour of working with me, the clarity being something that has helped them make a very, very big, significant decision that they were kind of like stuck about. So things like parting certain ways with someone, whether it's in a committed relationship or a divorce from a marriage, or leaving a job and taking a leap of faith and becoming an entrepreneur or business owner, speaking up about something that they've never spoken up about, things like that. So seeing how they're like, absolutely not. There's no way that I can do this. I'm so scared. I don't see how I could do this. To then an hour later being like, cool, I'm about to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of cool.
Got it. Okay, so now it takes me to the real question I wanted to ask you. I wanted to distract you a little bit from the real question, the deeper question I wanted to ask you. So there's something that stands out about you that's extremely strong.
Okay.
And I saw you're like, what is he gonna ask me? And it's something that I saw grow a lot more in the last couple of years. Really stood out. And it has a lot to do with your backbone.
Mm-hmm.
Having a backbone.
Mm-hmm.
Are you relieved? That's what this is about, this question?
Yeah,
You looked a little tense. You're like,
well,
what is he going to bring up?
And I think I'm also like, I didn't think that was what you were going to say.
Yeah. And it's something that stands out a lot to me
Mm-hmm.
is you having an even thicker backbone,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what I mean by backbone is your belief in yourself.
What you stand for.
What you stand for.
Stand firm in.
Right? What you speak up about
Mm-hmm.
that's meaningful to you, and not just blabbering, but actually having substance behind
Mm-hmm.
that. What changed that had you develop this backbone, whether it be from your past? Just share one story from your past, recently in the last couple of years. And the reason why I'm asking this is because I know a lot of people who struggle with having a backbone.
Mm-hmm.
They have a hard time speaking up for themselves. They have a hard time telling people no, right? So, and that's something that I'm seeing when I look out into the world. I have clients, I have friends who are afraid to be themselves, right? Back to authenticity, full circle. And a lot of it has to do with having a backbone. Mm-hmm. So what was it that had happened in your life, recent times, in the past, that had you make a decision where you're like, you know what? I'm standing up for this and I'm speaking up about this. This is what I'm committed to.
Two-part answer. First part of my answer is a combination of everything that happened in the dark ages, where I started to make different choices and they felt very scary. So I knew an aspect of making those choices required courage, feel the fear and do it anyway. Yep. And because I did these things and allowed them to play out, things, A, weren't as bad as I thought they would be, and B, actually produced an outcome far better than what I thought. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'm going to keep operating this way, right? So that's the first part. So that meant that by the time you came into my life, I had already developed that backbone. And then it became even stronger to like where it is now during the pandemic with you. And seeing how, even though we were in the minority of how it did not really negatively impact us or our businesses or our relationship, it actually, like, in a way, enhanced things and made them better. We were also very challenged from our external world, like some of our friends, family members, clients, peers, and a lot of people fell off. And then a lot of things got stronger, and we were then committed to operating a certain way. I was committed to operating a certain way, and you just so happened to be on board and vice versa. So I think that also contributed to being like stronger. That made me have an even stronger backbone to where I was like, I don't give a fuck what you think. I really don't. I genuinely don't, which meant if I lost you, if that fell off, if that relationship went sour, if, whatever, then that's fine. Because if it did fall off, go sour, I'd lose it. It would mean that it happened from me standing up for the truth, my freedom, your freedom. And then that meant to me that wasn't a genuine relationship. Like, that wasn't the real deal. That meant that was being held by something that wasn't, I don't know, strong.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I was okay with things falling off if that's what it took, like, and these relationships and these things happened and whatever. I was like, okay, well, I mean, look, we're friends with people and we know people that we disagree with about a lot of things, and we're still friends with them and they're friends with us because we can respect each other and hold space for each other. And I don't need you to think like I think, right? So the people who were not okay with that, because we didn't share in their beliefs, like, they're clearly not in our lives today. So a lot of outgrowth happened. essentially, during the pandemic for the both of us. And that created a stronger backbone.
Mm-hmm.
And it was awesome, too, just being on the same page with you and you with me, which I think just amplified that process.
Right. So to highlight too what you said as well, as far as making a decision, right? Making a decision to operate in a certain way,
Yeah.
to stand in or stand for a certain something and move in that direction, and basically be thinking and believing and knowing that I really don't give a fuck about your opinion.
No, I
Period.
don't.
And this, I just want to highlight this last thing here too, because it brings us in full circle here to the very beginning of what I said about your authenticity, about you being authentic and being real. And like, I appreciate you being here. The world appreciates you because there's something profound that sticks out about you, which is it's like you get what you get and more, but you get what you get.
Yeah.
And that's something that's unique and something that we need in this world more of, where it's like, well, the filtration process is here. So you get what you get. If you don't like it, then shay.
Exactly.
And I respect that about you.
Thank
Big
you.
time.
I want to say something quickly about that.
Please.
So you experience this often too, because I've seen people ask you the same thing to an extent.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh my God, I want to be more like you. Where I don't care about what other people think, because I see you don't care about what other people think. So how can I be more like you and not care about what people think? And every time that gets asked of me, or we talk about that in a session, I want to share the answer to that I give, just so people understand what really comes with not caring what other people think. So the goal, the objective, is not necessarily to get to a place where you don't care what anyone thinks. Because if you think about it, my loved ones, you, my clients, who, as you know, my clients are like my family, like we end up working together for years, most of them. My family members, my really close friends, to an extent, I do care about what they think. And I want to care about what they think because I care about our relationships. So if my aim is to be a better Angie at all times, which then that means a better coach, a better girlfriend, a better daughter, a better business owner, a better fur mom, a better friend, I have to be willing to listen and be open to the feedback that I get from these people I do care about and consider that, because I know I do impact them in a certain way. And so I do have to care about what they think and how they feel, because I want to know, like, I want to support you. I want to be there for you in the way you deserve for someone to be there for you. And if I'm not showing up in a way that is loving to you, and you're not getting a certain version of me that you deserve, then it's like I want to know those things, so I have to care. So what I say is then the goal and the objective, if we're going to consider what I just said, is you want to get to a place where what you don't allow what people think to modify you. That's more of what people really mean when they say, I want to get to a place where I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks of me. No, you do want to care what certain people think about you in the context I just provided. But essentially what you're saying is you want to get to a place where if someone thinks certain things of you, especially terrible things, or they judge you or they talk crap about you, where you're just like, okay, that doesn't really have to modify me or change who I am as a person. It kind of just like rolls off. So it's not that I don't care about what people think. I do care about what some people think, but I don't allow what people think about me, especially if you don't have my number even saved on your phone, to modify me, because I just kind of let it roll off. Because I'm just like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah.
So it's more of that. It's the modification is what you're aiming towards. You do want to care to an extent.
Right.
And so that is more of the goal with caring what other people think, that I typically give as my answer when I get asked about that.
Yeah, I get that too, and you mean modifying too as well. Just to elaborate on that is like you represent certain things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have certain qualities about yourself, and that's what makes you you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's also certain qualities that we've all adopted that sometimes don't serve us,
Sure.
right? And so when we care about our relationships and what other people think to a degree, those who we love, then there is an openness to, I would say, first neutralize or become aware
Mm-hmm.
of how we're showing up.
Sure.
Like I'll give myself as an example where I didn't realize that I was still being cold-hearted and I was lacking empathy. and
That's a whole nother episode.
And so by being aware of that and thinking that, well, this is just normal, like, why are you emotional? I don't understand that. That whole thinking of like, why are you even emotional? And like lack of empathy, right?
Why do you allow yourself to feel those emotions?
Why do you use the F word, feel? No, I'm just playing, I'm joking. Why do you even feel? And so, but yeah, like there's been modifications made to enhance myself as a person. So just to kind of bring awareness to that as far as what you mean, like the modifications as far as like changing really who you are as a person. Like, hey, you're someone who's outspoken. I don't want you to speak out anymore because it makes me uncomfortable. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, no, get out of here.
So now are you gonna let that stop you from speaking out and being outspoken because it makes one person feel? That's what I mean by like if you allow that to modify you,
right?
Like that's what I'm talking about. It's kind of like when I get asked for an example, I'm like, look, I've had a lot of people out there call me everything under the sun. A bitch, a cold-hearted bitch, believe it or not. Super rough around the edges, super rigid, super drill sergeant, a fraud, arrogant, narcissistic, like all these things, right?
Can I go? I'm just playing. I'm joking. I'm super joking.
And so, call me a bitch, things like that. And so the reason I'm able to kind of be with that when it has been said is because they're right. To an extent, they're right because they're where they are at in life, what I say, their box, which influences everything that's in their box, their upbringing, their perspectives, their belief systems, their life experiences. It colors how they view the world. It creates like a lens. So I know if someone thinks these things of me, they're viewing me through their box and through their filter and their lens, which means that it's having me show up to them as that. So they're viewing me through that, and that's how I appear to them. When in reality, those same things that had them call me these things for another person, to that other person could be, oh my gosh, she's so confident. She's so assertive. She is such a go-getter and so focused and so disciplined and so motivated and so inspired, and she really, really cares about people, and she's so passionate about what she does, and she's really good at setting boundaries, and so it's like those very same things that work for these people, for these other people, have you appear as arrogant, bitch, super tough, or, whatever. So that's why it's kind of like both people are right. However, what do we know? That these people are your people and these people are not.
Yeah.
So then why am I going to modify something about me because these people think all this crap about me when these people don't, and this works for them, and it works in a way where I bring value to them. Like they get value from being that way, and it inspires them and it lights something up inside of them. And so it's why it's like, you're not supposed to be for everyone.
Yeah, I do think like when something does come up consistently, where you have like several different people saying that, Rob, you're kind of cold-hearted. Like, like
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like there it isn't just about like their filter, but I think there is truth to it though, where maybe I am being cold-hearted. Like for example, also too, so like there's if it's consistent, it's like
right.
Maybe,
if it's something you always hear across the board, or you've been hearing it for years and years and years and years, or I don't know, like,
Yeah,
yeah,
to your point with that too.
yeah.
Yeah, and like there's also a part of me that gets, and I'm saying me because I'm just speaking for myself here, that gets activated around certain types of attitudes and behaviors. Right? There's like some stories I've been sharing with you recently about engagements with other people, right? And there's a part of me that turns into more of the observer role, and I'll get really quiet and just look at you because I really don't want to give you my power because you're annoying the fuck out of me and I really want to say something, right? So, and then there's some people where I act more of an asshole with, right? And so I think there's a level of responsibility, because I think someone can hear this and think, well, that's just them viewing me. Well, maybe there is a part of you that's being activated, not saying triggered. And I'm not saying this person's making me feel this way, but maybe there's a part of you that you activate, that you turn on around this type of person or around this type of environment. And maybe that's true about you. So I always try to look at it from that perspective too, where, I mean, I agree with you 100%, like how people view you through a filter, right? And also too, like maybe there is some truth to, and I can own this for myself, but being an asshole. Maybe there's some truth about being a cold-hearted bitch. Maybe that actually does exist within inside of you, and it has shown up with different people. And I think that's an empowering context where you can own that. Like, I'm not saying that you don't. I'm just saying that when it is consistent, and if you hear things consistently, I think it's important to own that so you can really create what you want, knowing that like you can turn it up if you need to turn it up, right? Because there's certain things that you were saying that people have said about you where I'm like, oh, I've seen that version of her. Do I think you are that? No, but I think that you have access to fucking power, like for real power, and it might come off that way. But again, this is how you know you're around the right person because I still love you no matter what. you can turn it up any which way. And I'm like, oh, you're so cute. I love you.
I agree with you. I think that both things we're saying can be true.
For sure.
Because there's something to be said about when you're constantly receiving feedback from people, you then changing yourself with everything that you hear.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what I'm saying, where I'm like, when something does get brought into your awareness, we do have a responsibility to reflect on that. Consider it, be with it, like you say, entertain it. And also, it's kind of like, well, I also have to consider where this is not a problem and the people who it's not a problem with and what this part of me does do over here. And, you know, I think that it stands out more as something to perhaps consider working on if everywhere you go, you get that.
Right.
That's very, very different. Like these things that I'm talking about that have been said about me are not things that I hear very often, but I have heard them from people, the, minority. And there's way more people that I'm surrounded by and I work with and I'm friends with who don't think these things of me and may know that they think this of me. Like that does exist, but like you, it's like, but she's not really like that. She'll only like turn that on if she needs to. So it's kind of like there's an acceptance that comes with it.
For sure.
So so that's what I'm totally with you. And I think both are true and need to be considered in that context.
For sure. And that's my dance. And that's my dance that I do. Just checking the time here. We have like less than 8 minutes, so we'll close out. But that's the dance that I do around shadow work is owning those parts, right?
Yeah.
And it's important to own those parts because then you can really build.
Sure.
And it's not lurking in the shadows where all of a sudden it creeps up and then boom, it's down. So this is a wonderful conversation. And again, if you enjoyed this, please comment below if you did enjoy this and what did you enjoy about it? And would you like to have more so conversations? Because this is more of me bringing her on, Angie on, and more of an interview-based thing. But I would love to have, as you can tell towards the end, this was more of a conversation. You and I are both interacting. And that's just a very small piece of the pie of how we interact with each other. But I want to say thank you for coming on here. And thank you for sharing your mind. And especially sharing some intimate stuff about your past. And I'm always genuinely interested on like about what changes, like what changes happen in people's lives, or what switches, what occurs in their lives that has them redirect themselves. For me, to me, it's just one of the most profound things for a human being to experience is sudden impact and sudden change. Because then it's like, oh my God, now you just experienced this. This is awesome.
Tell me
And
more.
you might be in tears. You're like, this is horrible. Like your whole life is going to change. So thank you for sharing some of your shit with us. And where can people find you?
Instagram is where I am active on social media. At I am Angie Sanchez, and also through email. If you want to send me an email, shoot me an email, Angie@angiesanchez.life.
Right, you're an EQ coach.
Yes, emotional intelligence coach.
Right, and who do you help specifically?
I help people who seek emotional freedom and want to learn how to use their emotions as leverage and honor and respect that part of them without allowing it to consume them and paralyze them, rather help catapult them into what they want most in their lives.
Beautiful. I love it. If you have any questions, please reach out to her. You're very effective at what you do, and there's a lot of people talking about you and your effectiveness and the impact you've had on society and the people you've coached. So I appreciate you. The world loves you. And from here, we're signing off. As you know, conscious creators are the future. There is no ceiling.
There is no ceiling.
Thank you, my love.